Welcome again to today's class. Welcome to today's class. And before we dive into this is basic science class actually, and before we dive into our topic, there's a question which is, where do we get papers from? Where have you ever thought of? You just see those white stuffs, or sometimes they are being colored, yellow, pink, and the rest. So where are they gotten from? Where do we get papers from? So it's a question that we need to answer. So in the course of this lesson, we're going to know the materials from which paper are gotten from. So that leads us to our topic. This is living and non-living things, but the part 2. By the end of this lesson today, you should be able to state the properties of living and non-living things. You should be able to mention the differences between living and non-living things. And also, you should be able to state the uses and importance of living and non-living things. Then differentiate plants from animals and state the importance of plants and animals. So we are looking at the properties of living and non-living things. What are their properties? One is living things are made up of cells. And cells are the basic units of life. So all living things, anything that is living, that has the features and characteristics of living things, they are made up of cells. They are made up of cells. And as I said earlier on, cells are the basic units of life. And do not forget that from our previous class, we talked about living things exhibiting all the characteristics, that is all the features of life. And we talked about the features of life under the mnemonics of Mr. Niger D. And I'll just do a recap. M is movement, the R is respiration, the N is nutrition, I is irritability, G is growth, E is excretion, the second R is reproduction, then the card C is competition, A is adaptation, and D is death. So properties of living is that they exhibit all the characteristics of life. They evolve and require energy for daily activities. All living things require energy for daily activities. And for our non-living things, they do not exhibit any characteristics of life. They do not grow. That means they do not perform all the characteristics of life, all the features that we mentioned about living. They do not do that. And these things are made up of non-living materials. And that's why we can classify them as non-living things. So we want to look at the differences between living and non-living things. What are the differences between living and non-living things? You can almost draw an inference from the characteristics of living things. So anything that non-living things cannot do, any features that living things are doing that you cannot see in a material, it means that that material is non-living, or that matter is non-living. So number one is living things can move. Non-living things cannot move. If you keep a stone here, when you come back, you will still find the stone there. Unlike animals, you can see the goats, they will move. You can see the birds, they will move. Even humans, they move from one place to another. Even same thing occurs to plants. They swing, they move their branches, they move their leaves, their seeds fall. So that shows that they can move. They can, and as I said in the previous class, movement is change in position. So they can change position, but non-living things cannot. Anywhere you keep them, you always find them there, except an external factors comes to push them forward. For example, I mentioned stone. If you keep your stone here, you come back and you still meet it. If you keep your pen somewhere, if no one comes to take it, you still find the pen there. It doesn't move. They do not move. Number 2 is energy is required by living things. All living things require energy. They require energy to perform their daily activities. But for non-living things, they do not require energy. They don't need energy because they are not living. Number 3 is living things are capable of growth. They can grow. They can have increase in their size. But for non-living things, they cannot reproduce young ones. They cannot grow. But living things can reproduce young ones and they can die. But non-living things, they cannot grow, they cannot reproduce young ones, and they cannot die because they are non-living things. They are not capable of performing those functions. Living things respire, that means they breathe. They take in oxygen. For example, humans taking oxygen to produce, animals taking oxygen to produce their food, to break down food. Whereas non-living things, they do not respire because they have no need for nutrients. They are not living, so they do not respire. They don't carry out those activities. Number 5, living things adapt to the surroundings. When we look at adaptation, they have a specific features that made them to be able to live in that surrounding. But non-living things, they don't have that. They don't adapt to their surroundings because they don't even feel anything. They don't know what is happening around them. They are not living. They don't have life in them. And living things respond to stimuli, but non-living things cannot. If you like eat a stone from now to tomorrow, it won't respond. But if a stone should hit you as an individual, you're going to scream because you're going to feel the pain. You can respond to your environment. You can respond to the external factors, those things that are happening around you. You can respond to them, but living things cannot respond to them. You can smash your pen on the floor. It won't talk back at you. It won't do anything. But if you slap a human, they will shout, they will scream, or they respond by tears coming down from their eyes. That means they can feel the pain. They can feel what you are doing to them. That is, they can respond. But non-living things cannot. Smash a book on the floor, you pick it up. It cannot respond to those things. So non-living things cannot perform any of the features and characteristics of living things. They cannot perform any. Whether it is movement, they can't move except somebody move them. They cannot respire. They cannot take in food, that is nutrients. They can't. They don't respond to stimuli, irritability. They don't respond to stimuli. Also, they don't grow. They cannot grow. If you leave a stone here, when you come back the next year, you will still find it there, except somebody breaks it down, or that's when you will see that it has been pieces. Except that they remain the same. They don't excrete. Non-living things don't excrete. They don't have any waste product to take out, to take away. And also they don't reproduce. Have you seen anytime, maybe you've come across a mountain that gives birth to another mountain? It's not possible. They don't reproduce. Then they don't compete. They can't adapt to their environment. They are not living and they cannot die. So I want to look at uses and importance of living and non-living things. What are the uses and importance of living and non-living things? Despite that non-living things do not have life in them, they are useful, they are important to living things. So we are going to be looking at both the importance of living and non-living things. 1, plants provide food for animals and man. Plants provide food for animals and man. Yes, animals, for example, goats eat grass, sheep eat grass. So they are source of food for animals. And for man, yes, we take in herbs. We take in herbs, our vegetables. These are plants. We take them in. Our fruits, they are gotten from plants. So they are source of food for both man and animal. Number 2, wood from trees supplies timber for the construction of houses. Wood from trees, they supply timber for the construction of houses. Wood, they are non-living things. Yes, they are gotten from trees, but once they are no longer living, they become what we call them wood. You don't call them tree again, you call them wood. They are not living again. So you can use them for the construction of your house. They are called timber. Some persons call them plank. So you use it for the construction of house. Number 3, fibers and latex obtained from plants are used in the production of ropes, sacks, and rubbers. Latex especially is used in the production of rubber. They extract it from trees, and they pass it through. They take it to the industry, and from there rubbers are produced. Fibers can be used for the production of ropes. It can be used for the production of sacks, and all these are gotten from plants. Number 4 is plants are used for beautification of our environment. We call these things flowers. You see beautiful flowers. We have the purple, the hibiscus, the rose, and the other flowers around for the beautification of the environment. And some of us sometimes we go there to take pictures because it beautifies the environment. And beyond that, they also help the environment. So plants are used for beautification of our environment. Number 5, some plants are medicinal. So some plants are medicinal, and we in the medical field, they synthesize those plants and they convert them to drugs. Some are converted to pills, some to injections, so that we can use them. So some plants are medicinal and they're useful to humans. They're useful to humans. We can use them to produce drugs, use them in the production of drugs and various drugs that we use. So number 6 is stones are used for construction. Stones are used for construction. When you see some places, you see that they are breaking down stones. They're using them for construction, either for the construction of road or the construction of building. Stones can be used for construction. So you have seen that both living and non-living things are very important. So you cannot, you can say, as living thing, you can say, I want to do without non-living things. No, you will need them in your daily activity, in your daily life. They are very useful. Very quickly, we'll go to classification of living things. Classification of living things. So living things can be classified into 2 major groups, which is plants and animal. That is the classification of living things. Plants and animal. Plants and animal. That is the classification of living things. So plants are living things that grow in the soil. Plants are living things that grow in the soil. So the basic parts of most plants are the roots, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, the fruits, and the seeds. So when we're talking about plants, I'm talking about grass, trees, any living thing that grows in the soil that you can see around you. It is plants. Whether they produce flowers or not, they produce fruits or not, or they have seeds or not, they are plants. And they, as I said earlier, they include your grass, the trees, and the things you can see around that they grow in the soil. They grow in the soil. So the second part is animal. And when we talk about animal, we're talking about goats, sheep, dogs, humans inclusive. I know you must be surprised that why would you say humans are animals? Under the classification, I told you 2 major classification of living things, that is plants and animals. So animals, humans are also classified under animals, just that we are called under the group mammals. So humans too are animal. Your hen is an animal, cows, donkey, just name it. Any animal you can see around you, whether they live in the forest, in the jungle, or they live at home, they are animals. Then we want to look at very quickly differences between plants and animals. So what are the differences between plants and animals? Not forgetting that they have the same characteristics because they are living things. So they have the characteristics of living things. They bear the characteristics, the features of living things. So what are the differences? How can I differentiate plants from animals? Number 1, plants generally are rooted in one place and do not move on their own. If you could remember in the first part of this lesson, I said plants, they don't change position. Yes, that was the word. But they can swing. They don't move on their own, except there's an external factor like the wind. When it blows, they move. Or the bend. So plants generally, they are rooted in one place. They don't move like humans or other animals. They can't move freely. So they are rooted and always on their own. For animals, most animals have the ability to move freely. They can change position. They can move from one place to another. They can go from one place to the other. Number 2, plants contain chlorophyll and make their own food. Plants, they contain chlorophyll and they make their own food. You don't need to source from food from somewhere else. They produce their own food by themselves, and they contain chlorophyll. But animals, they do not contain chlorophyll. Animals do not have chlorophyll, and they cannot make their own food. They are dependent on plants or on other animals for food. Animals cannot make their food on their own. Unlike plants contain chlorophyll and they can make their own food, but animals cannot. So they are dependent on plants and other animals. And what do I mean by this? We eat food that are produced by plants. We eat their fruits. We eat yam. Yam is gotten from plants. We eat rice. Rice is gotten from plants. When we even talk about other animals like the goats and the rest, they get their food from plants. They eat grass. and other from other animals. Humans, we eat meat, we eat egg, we eat milk, we take milk. All these things are gotten from other animals. So we cannot produce our own food ourselves. We are dependent. Animals are dependent on plants and on other animals. Number 3, plants gives off oxygen and taking carbon dioxide given off by animals. If you remember in respiration, I said something like respiration is the taking when you take in oxygen and use the oxygen to break down food in order for you to produce energy. But in this case, this only is applicable to animals. Animals take in oxygen, but plants, they give off oxygen and they take in carbon dioxide given off by animals. So plants take in carbon dioxide, whereas animals, they give off carbon dioxide. We take in oxygen. As human, we breathe in oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. Animals give off carbon dioxide, which plants needs to make food, and take in oxygen, which they need to breathe. All animals take in oxygen, whether it's on land or in water. They take in oxygen so that they can produce that to break down their food. Number 4 is plant cells have cell walls. When we look at cell walls, the cell walls of plant, the cell of plant, they have cell walls and other structures that make them, that differentiate them, that differ from those of animals. Plants have cell walls and other structures that differ from those of animals, but animals don't have cell walls. Animals possess cells. All living things possess cells. If you can remember when I talked about the properties of living things, I said all living things possess cells. But for plants, they have cell walls. They have walls that guard their cell. But animals, we do not have any wall. We don't have cell walls that guard our cell, and we have different structures that are different from that of plants. So it's one of the distinctive features that differentiates animals from plants. Number 5 is plants have either no or very basic ability to sense. Plants have either no or very basic ability to sense. Unlike animals, animals have a much more high developed sensory and nervous system. In the research, plants respond to stimuli very slow. They respond to it slowly, but animals respond fast because we possess nervous system. So they are very highly developed, and we respond to the changes, to the external factors, to our external environment more than plants. So now very quickly we're going to look at the uses of plants. We're going to look at what are the uses of plants. Number 1, plants serve as sources of food to man and animal. They serve as sources of food to man and animal. E.g., we have the okra, the cassava, the beans, the rice, the oranges. Animals feed on grass also. Humans, we feed mostly on these things that I mentioned. And number 2 is plants serve as source of medicine to cure diseases. They serve as source of medicine to cure diseases. So as I said earlier on, that plants, you can synthesize some plants to get their nutrients, to get what they contain that can cure diseases in both animals and humans. So plants serve as source of medicine. They are medicinally valued, so they are source of medicines to cure diseases. Number 3 is plants are used as firewood. I'm just going to mention a few. Plants are used as firewood in some, maybe when you get to villages, or even in some places where the big industries where they produce coal and the rest, you see woods there, and they burn them to produce coal, to produce coal. Yes, so plants are used as firewood. Number 4 is plants are used in building and construction. When you have your timbers, you can use them in building and construction. Even your furnitures, your cushion, sometimes they use these woods that are gotten from plants to build those furnitures. So plants also give oxygen during photosynthesis. Do not forget that I said plants take in carbon dioxide and they give off oxygen. Animals take in oxygen and gives off carbon dioxide. So plants give oxygen. They give off oxygen during photosynthesis. Aiding animals to take in oxygen The next is that flowering plants are used to beautify our environment. Flowering plants, we most time call them flowers. They are used in the beautification of our environment. Next is papers. If you remember our question, is that what material is paper made from? So papers are made from trees. So you might be thinking, what is the relationship between trees and papers? Those white stuff you see, and you see trees, some brownish bark and the rest. So what is when they take it to the industries, they are used to make paper. So our papers are made from trees. Now the next is some domestic and wild animals can feed on plants. Some domestic animals, they feed on plants. Some wild animals too, they feed on plants. When we talk about domestic animals, such as we have the goats, we have the sheep, and these ones, they feed on plants. And some wild animals too, the animals that you don't rear at home, you don't rear antelope at home, they also feed on plants. They don't eat animals, fellow animals, they feed on plants. So we can see that plants are very useful to both human and animal. So we want to look at the uses of animal. Are animal useful too? Animal, yes. So number one is wool and hair are gotten from animals, and when they are processed, they are made into clothes, robes, and tents. You can get your wool, hair from sheep especially, and when they are taken to the industry, they are used to produce clothes, they are used to produce robes, and also tents. The next is hides and skin of animals are used in the production of leather. You can have your leather shoe, your leather bag. They are made from the hide and skin of animals. So they are used in the production of leather. You can see that animals too are very useful to humans. The next is meat. Your meat, most of us will like taking meat, whether it's in form of chicken or whatever. You have your turkey and your cow meat, whatever it is, meat, as far as it is meat, they are gotten from animal. The milk, your milk, some persons, they love milk. You can take your beverage. Some persons cannot take their beverage without putting milk into it, yes. So, and your eggs, some persons, they can't take their spaghetti without putting egg, they can't take their indomie, they can't take their rice without putting egg. So all these are gotten from animals. So they are source of food to human. And the next is bones, hooves, and horn of animals are channeled into various usage. Bones, hooves. Bones, we can use, there's a process in which they produce bone meals, because bones are very high in nutrients like calcium. They contain calcium. So they are produced, they are used, they are broken down, or they are in the industry, taken to the industry, and they are made into bone meals, which are useful to human. Hooves and horn of animals too are channeled into various usage. So before we end today's class, we're going to check the exam guide for some questions relating to what we've just learned. Now, so you open the exam guide app and you pick your subject, which is basic science. I've picked that already. You select topics of interest, which is still under living and non-living things, and the ones that are related to it, which I've also picked already, and you click OK and you get started. So I have a question here. The basic unit of life is, I mentioned something when I was discussing the properties of cell. I mean the properties of living things. So the properties of living and non-living things. So we have the basic unit of life is, we have A, cell, we have B, organ, we have C, tissues, we have D, organisms, and we have E, system. So what is the basic unit of life? I mentioned it. I said cell is the basic unit of life. Very simple. Cell is the basic unit of life, and it's one of the properties of living things. Okay, you also have here, so which of the following is not the characteristics of living things? You have respiration, you have feeding, you have excretion, movement, and expansion. So you have respiration. Respiration is a characteristic of living things. Feeding is a characteristic of living things. Excretion is a characteristic of living things. Movement, it is, but expansion is not a characteristic of living things. Okay. The breakdown of food substance to release energy is referred to as A. Excretion, B. Respiration, C. Reproduction, D. Nutrition, and E. Irritability. So excretion is not the breakdown of food substance. Respiration is not. Is respiration the breakdown of food substance to release energy? Yes. Because why? When you take in your oxygen as human, as animal, it helps to break down your food substance in order to release energy. So respiration is the right answer. It's not reproduction. Reproduction is the giving birth to young ones. Then it's not nutrition. Nutrition is eating. Irritability is not. It is response to stimuli. We have a question here that is related to our topic. The following are domestic animals. So under the animals, we have A, chicken, we have B, dog. I remember mentioning domestic and wild animal when we're looking at the uses, the importance of plants and animals. So we have the following are domestic animals. Chicken, is it domestic? Dog, is it domestic? Leopard, is it domestic? Is the goat domestic? Is the dog domestic? These are the options we have. So we're going to check them one after the other. Chicken, yes. Dog, yes. Leopard, no. Leopard is not a domestic animal. It's a wild animal. You can't rear it at home. Your goat, you can rear your goat at home. Your dog, you can rear your dog at home. But leopard is not a domestic animal. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives detailed explanations of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can also learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study modes, mock modes, and practice modes. It has other features that make learning fun. It is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell and share the video with others that will benefit from it. Bye for now.